Welcome to this session of the Ancestral Healing Summit. I'm Lisa Bonise, your host, and my guest for this session is Natalia O Sullivan. Our topic today is turning generational curses into blessings. Natalia O Sullivan is a natural-born healer and spiritual counselor who's worked in the spiritual and holistic field for over 30 years. She's written books, she teaches workshops and offers lectures, and her work as an ancestral healer enables deceased family and friends to communicate with loved ones on the earth plane. And she's here with us today. Natalia, it's always so good to see you. Thank you for joining us from all the way across the pond. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm always delighted to be invited to talk about my favorite topic. So thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. And I recommend Natalia's books to anybody who's watching this. Just check her out on Amazon. But today we're going to talk about one of my most favorite topics, generational curses, how to turn generational curses into blessings. So let me ask you, before we dive into the conversation, what are your thoughts on the topic?
Well, it's very interesting because I've recently been studying and developing the idea of how we address trauma, in our lifetime, not just ancestral kind of influences. And what I realized is that there is these amazing ways that people can heal. So you're healing. So trauma could be like a curse. So whether it's biological, some serious illnesses, or psychological with some anxiety and some depression or other problems. And I realized as well, I thought, how do we experience our trauma without it feeling like a curse? So it's always pivotal for me to really understand that if our family and ancestors have experienced trauma and also created these kind of darker legacies, I thought, how do we as descendants kind of transform those? I feel like that's part of our responsibility as descendants to go, well, can I change the way that the journey is going for my family? Can I be brave enough, courageous enough, and loving enough? So that's the reason why I chose this topic. I wanted to address the kind of darker issues, but also the transformative ones that we can apply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's talk about the word curse itself, because I know a lot of people, when they hear that word, I mean, I even have sort of a knee-jerk reaction to it, like, ew, curses. I don't believe in curses. Well, maybe I don't believe in, the fairy tale version of curses, but explain what that word means, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, if we just start it very simply, it's like unlucky, unhappy, constantly ill, traumatized in the sense that you feel like everything makes you too frightened to change anything. So even though these are kind of human emotions, human frailties, but they feel like they don't come from something you've created. So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about this topic, because sometimes you're born into a family and you're quite innocent, as we all are in the family, but you realize there is always this inability to make money, or always losing money, or always getting ill, loads of family members becoming very ill with different kind of cancers and conditions. And it's not, there are many stories I've dealt with. So I'm thinking, well, where does the source of that curse or the suffering actually comes from that we didn't create ourselves? So I just want to explain, there's a big difference with somebody. It's not just somebody who's got a gambling addiction that suddenly goes, well, I'm just, I'm no good with money. It's the curse is not so much someone who chooses to behave like that, but it's to do with somebody who's innocent and trying to do their best, but everything falls apart. And it's the same thing that if somebody's lifestyle causes cancer or some other serious illness, you're not looking at just the vulnerabilities in your DNA. You're also thinking to yourself, well, I created that story, but it's the people who created nothing, who did nothing to create these negativities. Those are the ones I find most interesting. Where does the river, I call the toxic river, run down through the family, and how it chooses as well certain members of the family, why they're carrying a heavier legacy. So you could say a curse is like a heavy legacy.
Okay. Well, let's follow that river. In your experience, how does the curse decide who gets hit by it and how?
Interesting. So if we go back to the idea of what a curse is, so there's several. I just kind of want to slice away. It's like if I'm making myself a delicious sandwich. I'm not going to make myself a big sandwich, a curse sandwich this big, We kind of have to streamline the story. So if we stay with the idea of what a curse is to start with, so let's say someone in your family history 300-400 years ago died very badly, were in a very angry situation, or they were in a community that was very negative, and they cursed each other's families. I heard some terrible stories from all cultures, doesn't matter where you're from, where family members are very jealous of another. So that it starts with land, it starts with power, it starts with money, and it starts with some kind of death or a jealousy. So there's quite an interesting energy that is created in that particular family unit from a long time ago. Now, what's interesting, how does this river come and navigate itself? In other words, how does it choose who to land to in each generation? So there are two types of, you say, extreme people. Again, I'm streamlining my sandwich here. So there are those that are very negative. And the negative souls in certain people, they're not just dark souls. They are ones who hold the negativity, the curse, with such a joy in some ways, because they experience it in the sense of going, I enjoy this power of this real dark, can make someone a bit narcissistic or sociopathic, all sorts of these deep psychological behaviors where you enjoy hurting somebody else. You enjoy sexually having more power over somebody else, or somebody who understands how to really make a lot of money, but make people suffer while they're making the money. So this innate sense of using darkness that is inherited is interesting. So you get one person who loves it. I mean, that's as simple as I can put it. There's other issues. And there's another person who is very much a victim, who is carrying the darkness of the family tree because of the light they carry. Now, there's two ways those are the people I want to talk to. I mean, I can't change someone who enjoys being dark, because that's not what we're here to do today. That's another story, another time. But those people that carry a lot of light, that carry compassion and are very loving, for some reason, they sometimes are carrying the darkness or the curse of the family tree on their shoulders. Now, these people are, if they could turn around the story, those are the ones I'm addressing today, where you can turn the curse into a blessing. Now, you think, how can I move from something that's so horrible, desperate, and so painful into something that can be healed and of light? There are really amazing things that one can do to change that. And this is why I'm approaching it like from the trauma therapy that people go through, where you've been a victim of some terrible situation, whether it's war, abuse, tragedies of some kind. There are some exemplary people who have really healed. And they have really turned their suffering into something that is quite an amazing legacy. And they're an example to others. So when we're looking at how do we heal this curse, is we also, first of all, need to look that we can. The second thing we need to look at is examples in our family tree of those that we admired that went through tragic circumstances, how they turned things around for the family. So we're not the only ones that can do this. There are others who came before us, were doing it before we were even born.
Well, now, do you think that it's necessary to even know that, as you're saying, a couple hundred years ago, when people were really genuinely flinging curses at one another? And I mean, sometimes I think they landed because you believe in curses. And yes. So therefore we are cursed. And so you behave as if you are cursed, et cetera. And what about people who don't necessarily know that someone has, brewed something up and sent bad juju their way? Do you need to know?
I have to say, people that, even if they don't believe it, even if they're not spiritually sensitive or psychic, or the people that have turned up on our doorstep going, I know there's something not quite right. People know that it's not a normal sense of unhappiness, or every time you leave the house, something goes wrong, your car breaks down. I mean, it's not just 1, 2, because there's always the 1, 2, 3 tragedies that happen. The light bulb goes, the car breaks down, and something else happens, and then it stops. There are cycles of, broken bits of life that have to happen. It's part of the life-death life cycle. So I'm not asking those people that to look at the idea that possibly why they're unhappy, it is to do with a curse. A curse is a very selective energy. And it's like, you could say 1 in 10 families, you could say, have experienced that running through the family tree. It's not everybody. So again, do you need to know? Well, I think the thing is that if you feel there's something wrong, if you have a sense that this is more than just you, I've got this, a great example is this wonderful woman came to see me. She got breast cancer recently. And she said to me, I looked and I thought there is no need for me to get breast cancer, but not only did 4 of my aunties die of breast cancer, I mean, it's a genetic thing, but also several cousins, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, then she looked at patterns of illnesses that ran through the family. So lots of bronchial issues, and that whole load of men died of bronchial issues. And she said, it really, if you look at my family tree, it's like everyone died before they were 60 and they all died of terrible illnesses. She said, it's not just a one-off. So when you're trying to work out, is this a one-off? Are you the 1 in 10? Is there something further back in the family that is just running through like a poison ivy or a poison river? Then I think you need to say to yourself, is it? And then be clever to really do some research. And the research doesn't have to be that you're proving the point to yourself, because remember, everything like in court, you're an innocent until you're proven guilty. Until you get enough evidence, there is no curse. But slowly, as you start to unravel, you begin to see patterns and you see behaviors. Then you see characters, then you see family members from the past, then you find photographs of these family members and you go, ooh, you know, there's an unhappiness or there's some story. And then you find that there's been a whole load of things happen to those people. Then you can go to the curse court, you could call it, and just say, I have enough evidence to say that something needs to be done, because this is showing me this is more than just normal human, generational issues that happen.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for letting me really drill down here, because I want to make it, really clear what we're talking about here, so that we're not dealing anymore with the skepticism. Now we know what we're talking about. So when it comes to, working with this, dealing with it, and making changes that need to be changed, I know that one of the most profound ways that ancestral healing changes our lives is the feeling that we're finally loved and supported, and that things are going well. But how do we ever get there if we're angry with our family? How do we work with their legacies if we don't want anything to do with them?
Yeah, that's a very painful story. And you do hear that happens a lot when everything's got out of control. Now, the out of control is when you realize as the daughter or the son of parents or grandparents that no one has taken any responsibility for their behaviors. The anger is still angry, the abuse is still the abuse, the money issues are still the money issues, and nobody just stands up and go, well, maybe, I can do something about this. And so what happens is that you get more and more hurt and more angry. But what I often say to people, if you really want to turn this around, rather than, you can't just distance yourself, you need to distance yourself to save yourself sometimes as well. But really to return to the story takes a brave person, but sometimes we have to return to say, I am no longer going to be haunted by this, because the problem is, if you ignore it and you decide that it doesn't belong to you, it doesn't mean you vanquish this whole legacy, this anger, this hurt, because I can guarantee all the people I've worked with who decide, I don't want to talk about them, I never want to see them, it's nothing to do with me, that you are then still embodying a lot of pain, because you're still haunted by the fact that you hate them, you're angry with them, they're not changing their behavior. So then I also, again, go back to the idea of, what do you want to do to heal? How are you capable of doing to make the changes, again, looking forward, not looking back anymore? But I noticed that a lot of people always seem to have this very high expectation. I'm not saying I didn't either, but I always kept going back to my parents going, please, if you did this, please, if you did that, or can we have a better Christmas? We got that. Have we got a new year coming? Have we got a celebration? Have we got another wedding, on the family wedding? Are we still all going to have a rip-roaring fight and hate each other after every time the family come together? So if you are one of these people who keep pleading to the family members to change their behavior, I would say to you, learn not to do that, because they will not change. And what changes things is you looking after yourself, if you're making some clear decisions of how to make yourself feel better and well, and not repeat that with your own relationships and your own children. But this is just ancestral healing and behaviors. So if we're talking about this, the deeper issue of the idea that there is so much darkness in the family. So, if one member of the family, I'm afraid to say this is like the worst scenario, is a murderer, is the son going to be the murderer or the grandchild? So these legacies, these dark legacies that run through the family, is also including anyone who does who's been sexually abused. Will they repeat the story? And the same thing that goes back to money issues, power issues, relationship, intimacy issues, all these they put a stop to allowing that person who's been born into that family to say, well, do you, as a human being, remain stuck with a family story, or are you capable of removing yourself and creating a different legacy? And that takes a very brave and very courageous and a beautiful person to be able to do that.
Yeah. We've been talking about people needing to be willing to change, and if we're the ones who are willing to do that, but others are not. Why do you think that some folks do turn away from changing when it's really change that we often need the most?
I know, it's funny, none of us, and I've been doing this work for 30 years. And even when I do the work for myself, I still can feel my inner child stamping its feet and putting on I call it the angry face, because it really takes effort. And I let myself have a tantrum. I go into that phase where I've seen with my other clients where I go, why is it me that has to do this? Why isn't it my sister, my grandmother? Why am I doing this? So when we get over the whys and the tantrums, then what happens, we then realize change is not so painful. Because as human beings, we kind of like to control everything. And if we were born this way, if that's how we exist, if we like to have chicken on a Sunday, we don't really, it doesn't matter how young or exciting you are, you still want to learn how to exist in exactly the same way that you've come into this world. And so it takes that bravery, the courage and ambition to say that I can do this. So change is not comfortable. Most of us don't, unless you're an adventurer. And then if you're an adventurer, even when you adventure and then you reach a certain age, you suddenly go, I really just want to sit at home in front of the fire. So there is always this closing down that happens at some point. So I always just want to rush into just saying, I remember my auntie always saying to me, Natalia, the best thing to do when you have the energy and you're young enough, do the work, do your healing, do your career. Because she said, one day you'll be too old and too tired and you'll have to navigate what it's like to be an older person. And being an older person, she says, it takes all your energy. So I just want to say it reminds me of a very Buddhist story where for the first 60 years of our life, you feel all this like energy comes down to you. You're sort of being filled up. This is your sole opportunity. This is why you're here. This is your existence. This is the support. These are all the things that you have to be challenged and learn. So you have all this energy. And I remember reading a story. It says when you're 60 plus, the water or the joy or light or whatever starts to pour out of your body, because you're emptying to get ready for your death. So what's interesting as well, part of this, curses, healing, transformation is, at what age are you at the moment? And at what point are you needing to kind of tidy up or change your life? And the younger you are, the better do as much work as you can in making your existence as joyful and happy and protected, and actually face those things that you've always been trying to avoid. Because that's what happens. I'll do it tomorrow. And then something happens. Most people only deal with their curses when they're not getting their own way. So as soon as they haven't got the job, as soon as they haven't got the boyfriend, as soon as they haven't won the money, or they've got, something happens, they start to look at the disappointment and then they think about how to change their circumstances. I want to say, don't wait, just do it as you go. I think a little bit every day, a little bit of connection, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of honoring how you're journeying through your life creates strength and bravery. So if there is a curse in your family, or the 1 in 10, you've got to realize that your ancient ancestors, they know about the curse. They also have all the tools, spiritual tools that you need to navigate your way through cutting away that energy so you no longer have to carry it. So that's what people forget. They can turn inward from their heart. They can turn upwards into the light. They can also turn backwards into the kind of really these amazing characters in the family that did change history. They are still exist in spirit, and their wisdom is still in the atmosphere. So often I just take that, absorb that energy, allow yourself to connect. And it's quite amazing that you in turn, your inner landscape has all the tools that it needs to create the changes that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you brought up the ancient ancestors, because in my experience, I agree with you. Yes, that they are the ones who they've healed all their garbage, and so they're the ones who can most easily help us. But let's talk about how we do that and what can actually help us connect with them.
Okay, so the first thing, which is very simple, and you can reapply that all the time. The first thing is you've got to believe. I mean, that is as simple as that. You've got to believe. And also the second thing, you've got to think, you're worth them coming to you. So that is a little self-esteem. That is a little bit of light in you going, otherwise you think, well, why would they? How would they help me? So you have to believe that they can, and then you have to believe that you're worth it. The third thing you need to do is very simply is just begin to create some time to understand how they would connect with you. Now, how you do this, first of all, is identity. People like to work it out, so they have to see it to believe it. So I often ask people to go back into where your family started, where they lived. Could be Middle East, India, Africa, Scotland, and look at the culture, look at the history of the land, and look at how it existed. And most of these ancient ancestors, I would say pre-Christ. So you're talking about 5,000, 3,000, 2,000, not 500 years ago. So the 500 years ago ancestors are the ones that we can actually tag on, but actually the ones that were in existence at the beginning of our family's evolution are the ones who understand the earth. They understand the cycles of life. They understand how to be quiet. They also have seen the journey of your family tree going through all these periods of history that we became very dark and very controlling, like the religious wars, all of the war, war migration, and also they've seen a series, let's say at least 10 generations back, they've seen the journey of your family history going up and down, and they see the patterns. Because they are ancient means they are closer to the earth mother. And they understand the whole cycles of life. They are the kind of, you could call them the wisdom keepers. So I would say, even if you think, I don't know, I would always go back to your family, say as far back, see where your heart leads, because I've got Hungarian and Spanish. So, it's interesting. I love my Spanish side, but I'm more excited about that over the last few hundred years because I know it more. But actually the quiet, wise energy, I always see this ancient Hungarian ancestor. And I see him in the hills, I see him in the snow, I see him in the quiet. And Hungary, and it's out of its city, is actually, the countryside is so beautiful. So I always think I kind of lean into that quietness. So that's how I started. I mean, there was no book, I'm afraid to say, that can teach you to really understand how you feel in your heart to start with. Then you start to learn a little bit. Then the next stage is that you then learn to create a space every day to meditate with them or to connect. So as you can see behind me, I put they're all living ancestors, the ones I knew before they died. But I also put some deities like the Kuan Yin at the back, because I like compassion. I want to feel that I have a compassionate, wise ancestor that connects with me. So it's kind of, you build up the story. So all you do, and that's what they teach in traditional cultures, you basically every day you go, hello, it's me. As simple as that. Can you help me today? What energy do I need to do to get through my day? Or if there are problems with the family, you kind of can write notes and put names down. Let's say I've got a cousin who's not very well. You can put a candle on top of the name and send light to them. And then gradually what happens is you start to recognize the difference on how you're feeling when you haven't done your little prayers to the ancestors. And when you're just kind of getting up quick and rushing to work, you go, there's something. It's like an extra light that's plugged into you just to sustain you. It's very subtle, but I notice that the more people do, the more they are aware of it. And it helps with your intuition. It helps with you believing more of what you feel in your heart. And then the next step after that, lots of people start to dream very vividly of getting messages. And you also see portents and signs in your everyday life. You start to recognize, not in an anxious way, but you kind of realize that you're not alone, that the whole earth responds to you, because it is about us being on this planet, not in some cosmic fear. So, we're here and we're kind of learning how to exist here. And that's where the ancient ancestors connect with us. I've gone around the houses. I hope that makes, some sense. Just start with yourself, start with your ancestral past, then create a space to honor them, then get to know them by just spending 5 minutes a day. And when there is big family problems, I kind of pray to them. And I notice that there's an extra help that comes in.
I'm glad that you brought up the specifics of nationality, because I'm personally fascinated by that. You've got the Spanish and Hungarian, and I'm sure there's a smattering of other nationalities, but those are the predominant ones. Yes. Like, as I've mentioned on 1,000 conversations, I'm primarily Scottish on my mother's side and Maltese on my father's side. And the Scottish side is the one with all the stuff that needs fixing. And the Maltese side, when I sort of tap into them, I'm sure that they experience tremendous pains and sufferings, et cetera, that because no one here gets out alive. But I feel from that side of the family, this sort of love of the land and this sort of comfort and appreciating the grape, this sort of lust for life. And I didn't ask for that from them. That's what I feel from them. Is that what you're talking about? Just sort of just feel into their vibe?
Yes, and it's also what's interesting, then also see how creative you are. So this is one of my aunties made this. It's a Hungarian crocheted thing, and I absolutely love it. So when I feel like I need to be strong or I've got work, I find it, instead of leaving it in the cupboard, I say, take it out. So you might find there's all sorts of things that you might have collected in antique shops. You go, get so excited about that particular item, then buy it. There is something about ancient culture and history that really does resonate, that colors your life. And so that gives you an example. But it is so true. It's like, in your body, the sense of what they bring to you. And so sometimes, like you said about the Scottish family, it's like my Spanish family, there's just so many personalities. And then, and then you think about if you're having a night out with your family members on that very excited side, you notice that it's not much different to how you feel on your inner landscape about that connection. So it is the vibrancy, the busyness, the chaos, the darkness even. So we're kind of making it all very, very positive. But actually, I would rather see what is positive before I delve back into saying, okay, so there is a murdering ancestor that created a curse because all the people he murdered all hates my family. I'm not saying that happened, actually, but that's that kind of, the sending out of this darkness, as we talked about, curse. How do we, even if you look too much into the darkness and you look at the pain, what you do is you don't sustain yourself with any kind of light. You don't get positive. You go, it's not the only story. So it reminds me of, if any of you have had children, it reminds me of being at a playgroup, the little babies, preschool, as an example of, if you look at your whole family history. So let's say there's 15 small children. 12 of them are really playing very nicely. They're not punching each other. They're playing, they're sharing, they're talking, they're demonstrating the nativity plays or whatever they're doing, playing music. 3 little dark ones are causing so much mayhem that the 12 that are trying to play stop playing, because they are grabbing the oxygen out of the atmosphere. They're full on attention seeking. They're bullying, fighting, rip-roaring around the room. So what I want you to say to yourself, now, what do we do with the 3 that are causing mayhem for the 12? You take those 3 out and you watch the 12 that are really positive and kind, and they step forward. Because what you've got to remember, we're also on a planet of water, so nothing is ever empty for more than 2, So if you go gardening, you take, let's say, 3 plants out, and you go, I hate those plants because they're just frightening all the other plants. I know, I see things, all these kind of analogies. So you take them out, but I can guarantee by next season, there's something else grown there. So that's what I'm talking about. If you stay recognizing you don't need to obsess with what is negative, you take yourself away from the negative, or you remove the negative away from your life, and you strengthen yourself, and then you deal with the darkness. Because people often try and go headlong into something that is so unbelievably difficult that they forget the 12 that are supporting them.
And let's talk about deities, because you mentioned Kuan Yin, and I've got one right there behind me as well. And I certainly didn't grow up with Kuan Yin as any form of not with the Catholic upbringing. You do not bring in anything other than the saints and Jesus, etc. So how can we communicate with the ancient deities without fear of repercussions from the God of our upbringing?
Oh, interesting. I actually started with the Virgin Mary. Funny you should say that. And there was a phase in my life that if I wasn't, I absolutely love going to churches. I still do. The stillness. I love all the Catholic saints. I must say Italy is the most colourful and amazing. They have works of art everywhere around the day. Amazing. So I love that, because there is a certain amount of energy that we project to those deities, those saints, that also feed into all these different aspects. So interesting. I could have moved along, I want to say, to the Kuan Yin, because she's about compassion. But I always felt the first person that I deity that I honored and worshipped was Virgin Mary, because she reminded me of love. I wanted to understand how to be unconditional, not just to be unconditionally loved by some very powerful female identity or deity. So it's interesting. I always think you start the journey by your favorite things. So, and then I went through a phase where it was everyone kept buying me pictures of Kali, as in Kali Ma from India. So, I didn't put her on my Christmas list, but it's very interesting. I had friends post pictures. I had a friend buy me a painting of her, because I was at a different phase in my life. I was moving away from being innocent and love, that I needed to understand what it was like to stand in my own power. So she came into my life through all sorts of gifts. And then, of course, I've moved into a different phase. Now I'm an older, more mature person. So I'm trying to make things a little bit easier and brighter. So it's interesting. I'm now returning back to the idea of the Compassion Mother, because she holds power with grace. So I think it's an interesting journey, how we journey as a soul and find all these identities and connections. So to support our journey. And that part of the ancestral story, the wise ancestors are very similar, because you're looking at these examples of how you would like to be. So, and again, you can find these amazing characters, same thing as a deity or a saint, that you go, I want to be, I don't know, an academic, a doctor, a singer, a healer, or someone who could bring up their 9 children with never complaining. I'm not quite sure that would ever happen, but you never know. Whatever it is you're looking for, that connection, there are lots of characters, deities, saints, and I don't think you can, unless you're very, very conditioned by your religion and your culture, how you were brought up. Generally, I noticed that even the most religious, there is a real light and kindness. They do understand that it's in a way, even the language is different. It's a universal thing. Love is love, God is God, spirit is spirit. So, I always feel like it all interconnects, as long as we don't force someone else to speak our own language. So I don't force someone to like Kuan Yin, but I do respect if someone else does, or however they view that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for going there with me, because that's something that I've sort of struggled with throughout my year. But I chalk it up to a very dysfunctional Catholic upbringing. I'm sure there's wonderful Catholics out there. Mine were not. Yeah. So now I'm wondering, because we're getting a little bit low on time, I would love it if you would maybe lead us on a meditation or some sort of a practice, because you're so fun to work with. I would love to see that.
Oh, that's lovely. I think, just take a few minutes. I think if you're watching this and you're in your space and you go, I'm sitting, just first thing you need to do is just allow yourself to breathe a couple of times in through your nose and out of your mouth, just to, I call it sedate the body a little bit. So the mind and the body start to think about connecting. So you're breathing in I always feel like you need to breathe until you can hold the breath for as long as you can, and then you're breathing out of your mouth with a real sense of relief and emptying out. Again, we'll do another one. You're breathing in through your nose, taking the breath right into your heart and lungs. And at this point, as you're holding the breath, just feel yourself connecting into your heart and then breathe out of your mouth. Then I say we have to go inside. So how you go inside, you think about closing your eyes. And your eyes are like, I call them big curtains or a blind. So you have to blind down your eyes. And that's the reason why in meditation we have to close. So you're going to close your eyes and you're going to allow that frontal lobe part of your brain just to say, we've shut the curtains and we need to be a little bit quiet and go inside. And as we start to feel ourselves going inside, I want you to think about how your body is now feeling, because some bodies don't like this whole idea of closing their eyes and going inside. They get a little agitated. So you just tell your body, first of all, you're going to sit, you will relax. You think about your feet, and you tell your feet to let go. You think about your ankles, your knees, your thighs. And this lower part of your body begins to ease and connect really with this soft light that's now coming up out of the earth and into your body. You then think about your belly and around your tummy area. And again, all this agitation. Sometimes people are very fast and agitated. You again draw this energy up out of the earth and into your belly. And you'll tell your belly to just slow down and to relax. You then think about your heart and same again. Then you think about your head and you tell the same thing again. You're drawing up this light into your head and down your spine. Now, as your body starts to recognize that you're giving it attention by allowing it to join you for your meditation, most of us will begin to feel like we can start to relax. Our nervous system stops feeling out, it goes in. Again, everything is about going inwards now. And as we go in, I want you to recognize that inside your hearts, your big heart in the center of your chest, not your physical heart, it's like a garden, okay? The heart chakra is like an enormous garden, but this is your garden. And this is a sacred place that has all your secrets and your stories. But also, this is a place where your ancient ancestors come and sit with you to talk to you, to guide you. So you're going to just venture forward and imagine you're going into your heart. And inside your heart, there's a little gate. And this is a walled garden. And you're just going to push the gate open and step inside. And as you step in, you see the path in front of you. And as you go into your heart, you realize that this is a sacred place that you know and feel really good and safe. It's quiet, it's still, it's your own space. And often when you're dreaming and you're asleep, you go into that really big heart chakra in the sacredness. And right in the center is a bench, just by the most enormous tree you've ever seen sitting behind the bench. And this is the tree of life that you are connected with. And as you sit on the bench, you can actually just sit there quietly and you will easily call upon your mother's ancient ancestor, which is your mother's line. So you're going to say, please, could I ask you to come into my garden so I can see or feel who you are, that you're always with me. And as you're sitting there, you will feel a presence come over your left shoulder. And then you'll have a sense of whether this person is male or female. And some of you who are very psychic, you'll start to see some of the clothes they're wearing and the sense of feeling that they're bringing over to you. But the core of the energy will be one of strength and one of quiet. We then think about our father's line, and right over our right shoulder, we then ask that the ancient ancestor from our father's line to invite them to come and sit next to you on the bench in your sacred garden. And as they come forward, you'll have a sense of an energy start to build up behind your right shoulder and a presence starts to come in. I want you to just think about whether it's male or female and how much, what they bring, a lot of light and strength, or do they bring a quieter, more resilient energy? And just take a moment just to sense or feel what is behind you. And then recognize that whatever your relationship was with your parents or is, these two are friends and they are allies, because they are not in cahoots or have any power struggles between the two of them. So you need to recognize that directly in the independence of your mother's line, there is this ancient ancestor who is only there to support you like an archangel. And then your father's line, you will feel the sense of strength and positivity coming from them. So knowing that this is behind you, I want you to recognize that they're always able to come into this space. As soon as you've done your breath, you've connected with the earth, you can open up the gate in your heart and enter inside your garden at any time. Blessed be. You just take a deep breath in and out and come back in, open those big old curtains by your eyes and back in the room.
That was really very lovely. Thank you for that. Do you mind if I ask? If you don't want to answer that, that's cool. But who do you sense behind you?
Interesting. It was the same Hungarian gentleman who I felt this really cool, calm energy, which I didn't know because I'm quite open-minded. I think, well, I've changed. Maybe there's a different ancestor will come. But he was the same, and he was very relaxed, sitting next to me on the seat. Interesting. I have a different Spanish ancestral, could be French, like I said, my DNA could be either. I've got this woman turned up with lots of very colorful clothing, lots of red and black. And she looked like she was somebody from a more ancient time than I've seen before, but not someone very independent female. So I've not seen her before, but this is really quite a beautiful thing as well. I'm going into a new year, and I just thinking I can celebrate this new female energy coming in from my mother's line, which I thought, that happens as well. It's not always, I would go, be open. And also when you're tired, I like doing that meditation. I'm in the bath or lying down 5 minutes, or just sitting in the garden, looking out, just closing my eyes and just connecting to see if there's any support or messages that are coming in.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. On my mother's side, I was surprised. It was somebody who I've communicated with in the past. It was an Irish great. I don't even know how many generations back, because my mom is partially Irish as well, Scotch Irish. And
did you see what she wore? Did you see what she wore?
Oh, you know what? I didn't at the time, but when you asked, it just came. It was sort of a rough fabric, but nice. It wasn't silk or anything like that, but it was nice enough fabric and sort of a light green.
Yeah, I saw that when you said that, and I felt that she wears the scarf and crosses it around the waist. She has something, and she looked like she made it. That's why she likes it. Yes,
exactly. That's it. Yeah. So she's what I've learned from her in the past is that she had natural abilities. I'm not going to use the W word, but she had these abilities that she used foolishly, incorrectly, and she made a lot of messes, and that she sort of learned from what she did to be a lot more careful with her abilities. So
it's interesting. So it's an interesting example for people watching us share this, because sometimes it's nice to do it with a friend. Now, I would say this lovely great grandmother who has this gift, what she's learned to grow up. She's learned to discern who she shares it with. That's what I was going to say. There's a wisdom that she, as I said earlier, these ancient ancestors has watched the journey. So imagine how many granddaughters, great-granddaughters this woman has watched. And she has learned by watching them as well as learning from her own lessons. So she's lovely, I have to say.
Yeah. She has a really, before we worked together, there was a lot of scrambly, messy vibe kind of stuff going on. But since we've connected and I'm getting to know her a little bit, she's a really groovy presence. And I want to mention something else that is sort of off topic. One of the things I learned about working with my great grandparents is that at first I was always like, I don't even know their names. Why would they care about me? They've been dead for hundreds of years. They've moved on. But then I thought about how I feel about my descendants and how I hope they remember Grandma Lisa. I hope that I left some kind of legacy where they look back and go, you know what? She was interesting. Look at her writings. Look what she left for us, and how excited I am to think about the idea that I'm a vibrant presence in their lives. And then I realized, well, that's how they feel.
Beautiful. Do you know, that's so lovely, and it's so true, because, you know, our change of the legacy is that not only the way that we've given them an example. I think part of, if we go back into healing the curses to become blessings, or, you know, to be aware that curses are blessings, is also this ability of showing the world how we've come through. And we set an example. And also it makes them kind of trust themselves as well, because we don't always know who's going to be born through our family line. And also, you know, what souls are coming in to do whatever they need to do. So, you know, for us to set an example, to leave a legacy, I think that is a tremendous blessing, you know, and I'm always grateful to be able to know that I can do that.
Yeah.
And you.
Yeah. We need to be more conscious about
Yes.
the paper trail we're leaving.
Yes. That's so true.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Wow. Yeah, so I'm looking at the clock, and doggone it, we're close to being out of time. I want to make sure that I mention your website. It's soulrescuers.co.uk. I know for those of us in the States, we're like, what? Soulrescuers.co.uk. So what will people find if they visit you on your website?
They'll find out about our work, the books that we've written, the courses that we are doing, a lot of online courses now, because it's just lockdown and COVID has sort of opened up. So rather than just visiting, people can visit us and then learn from us as well. You know, and there's lots of information, and you know, it's a bit of learning, a bit of study, and a bit of examples of what we've done in the past. So it's always interesting.
Right. All right. Well, thank you again, Natalia. I just love having these excuses to connect with you. So thanks for
very
being
much
with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, and anytime. And I want to make sure that everyone remembers I've been talking with Natalia O Sullivan, and I want to thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation in the Ancestral Healing Summit.